So, something that came to me when I was taking the cold shower is how the elements, well, it was like with water, and then I had in the cold shower, and then sometimes I would just see the washing, whatever, washing thing, and if you notice that when water builds up and it becomes sort of this, I guess you can say a gush of water, like it can make loud sounds. And for those who have very sensitive hearing, sensitive senses, and all that stuff, it's like a shock, right? So this ties into what I sensed as when it comes to the elements. Let's just say elements, as literal and figurative or analogous representation of intention, desire, will, choices that we make, all those things. That when we sense it through presence, we can sense when something is being forced and something is gradual. So like when an element or when something is in its natural state, it's gradual, right? That's nature. Nature isn't meant to shock, unless of course there's a buildup. If you look at astrologically speaking, just like the planets themselves, there's a reason why Uranus, for example, is the earth shaker, right? So its sudden changes, all this, because it represents in our psyche, or the part of the collective, and basically also the way the planet behaves too. There's a connection between the cosmos and the planets and our psyche and all that stuff. There's a reason why there's reality itself, matter. There's a direct representation of that. It's really interesting if you really think about it, but at the same time, it brings to mind the growing necessity, or you can say necessity, or the growing challenge to be grounded, as people say it, or some people have called it, or be just now in the present. And because I'm very sensitive to sense, my senses are highly sensitive, I can sense when something is sound itself, sound and vibrations. I'm very sensitive to that. So I'm very careful with movement, because I have in my chart it shows that I have low earth. So that means I need to my head, the one that I have the most is air, and then followed by water, and then fire. So that shows a lot of there's a deficit of earth, and that just means, well, that also literally means that's what it is. I don't get in touch a lot with, even though I love nature, I don't feel like I need that to ground myself, to walk on grass, which I do. I walk bare feet, well, as much as I can. But there is kind of insecurity behind it as well. You're uncertain. Earth is dirt, right? And earth is soil. Earth is nature. Earth is Mother Nature. It's Mother Earth. So there's a magnetic. I've read it or saw it somewhere, that there's when we align ourselves with Mother Nature, Mother Earth, Gaia, and beyond, our feet can actually sense that. It's no wonder the feet are in medical astrology represented by, or it's represented by Pisces, because it's that absorption, it's the willingness, it's the openness, it's the belief, it's that kind of Pisces. It's that sort of transcending, and but at the same time like openness to it, right? It's very, it's, I don't know how to describe it. It is water, but it's like okay, so it absorbs. So we're going back to linking that to how you can use the symbolism or the representation of elements, but they work in the same way. Everything in the universe is both literal and figurative. They're not actually separate. I noticed that now. It's like, oh, okay. Even though we think it's figurative, it's not always just figurative. There's a literal representation and literal manifestation of how how matter is directly connected to our approach to it, what we do with it, how we see it, what we believe about it, and how we work with it. So, for example, like the four elements. Let's go with that one. So, fire, right? If you have fire, it's warm, it's nice, it gives. But if you have too much of it, in other words, there's a buildup. It's similar to there's a force happens when there's a sudden rush of energy. It's like, if you look at it from physics, it's from physics perspective in physics. Like, when you push something too much and there's nothing, it's not flowing, there's a resistance to it, or rather there's a buildup, or there's a sort of like a hindrance, or there's it's just not flowing. Like, if you dam a river, it's sort of the same thing. If you dam fire itself, what happens to it? Combustion, right? That one's pretty obvious, right? So it's no longer warm, it's no longer nice, and it's no longer potentially healing, right? It doesn't give us energy, it doesn't give us vitality, it doesn't give us inspiration and intuition. It's too much. The same thing when you have too much fire, probably wherever it is, it's just too much, and it's over top, it's exaggerated, it's like, right? It's like a supernova, right? Earth, it's the same thing. This one's also kind of obvious. When you have earth and you build too much of that, it becomes heavy, you become kind of, what do you call that, lethargic. There's fatigue that happens with earth. There's a sense of you can't move anymore, right? And eventually it builds up and builds up, and this is how you come up with stones, right? Or jumps. That's why you have gemstones. They're so compact because of all that pressure. There is benefit behind all that. That when you have combustion, it means it's time for change. It's time for adjustments. It's time for like a release. It's time for, but you can't always rely on those times when things build up and then all of a sudden it explodes. It's not healthy. It's not actually good for both the immune system and your health, your overall health, because it's such a sudden shock. There's a reason for why there's a shock, but it can't always be like that, where there has to be a shift. There is purpose for the yin yang, the black and white, up and down, left, right. These polarities are serving a purpose to make us realize that, we need to balance. So balance comes through that presence, being in the moment. So now let's go into air. Same thing. What happens when air builds up? Right? It's just like, it's not just a gush of wind. It's not just is it gust of wind? Gush. I'm sorry, gush. It's not just a gust of wind. It's a hurricane, right? That's how tornadoes build up. Like tornadoes are more complicated than that, right? But the point is that when something builds up, there's too much of that. There's too much thinking. There's too much processing. It's too over analytical. It's just repetitive cycle of analysis and just we're stuck in technicalities. We're stuck in this and this and this and this and this, and never making a decision, right? So it represents indecisiveness. It represents that kind of stuff. But that's when I say represents, that indecisiveness itself is also shown in how when you compartmentalize. Okay, in my past video, when you put it in a box and you just have air there, what happens? It just builds up. It goes nowhere. It has no progression. It has no growth. It becomes sort of kinesthetically stagnant, but not stagnant, but you know what I mean? It's like it's too much. It's like either there's no air, which is like a lack of oxygen. I can't breathe, and you can't, there's no processing. And it's really funny because if you have no oxygen, what happens when you don't have oxygen to the brain? Can't think. Can't process anything. So same thing, right? There has to be a flow. Can't be too little, can't be too much. There has to always be a balance. Last one is, of course, water. This is the one where if you take a shower and you hear all that stuff, you take a moment to process it. When you build water up, and it's just that analogy of the dam that I told you about earlier, it's the same thing. What happens? Right? It's overflowing. You can drown from it. So that's a lot of emotion stuff. There's a lot of it that can also be kind of combustible in a way. That's kind of combustion as well, because there's a sudden expression of emotion, and you get lost. We get lost in we drown in the emotional, overwhelming feeling, or the emotional, more overwhelming experience. It's just like, so it's basically suffocating as well. Right? So with presence, I noticed that for myself, you can feel it in the body too. Right? When something's too warm, even when I do the cold shower, you don't sit in there forever. You don't do 10 hours of ice cold. Otherwise, it's just, then you become, and that becomes frozen, right? It's the same thing. So it's kind of like stagnant air, stagnant water creates stagnant water. What does stagnant water have? Toxins, poison, right? What does overactive water do? It's too much excitement. It's not present. It causes a lot of irrationality, right? And yeah, so, but to get the point, but how this links to being present this is the key. So I'm using the elements as a kind of guide to show that you can observe it in your day-to-day life. And so for me, that's what I've been kind of going with. It's like every movement and every intention that I have, and bring the attention back to the physical, at least in the physical, and then it goes from, I allow the thoughts to come, and then they go, come, and then they go, come, and then they go. That's the flow, right? So thoughts are thoughts. So being detached from those, you cannot just say, I'm going to detach myself from that. You cannot say, this is what I want. That's more thinking. That's more attachment to the story behind it. As Eckhart says, it's the attachment to, it's the story. When we're having another story over another story over another story, that's really not present. That's not being in now. So I noticed that when I'm doing the thoughts too, it's you can sense it. There's a certain, for me at least, there's a certain like a rush of, I don't know what it is. It's a chemical like push. It's like a push, and then once I start to ease off, right? That's the being part, and I didn't really notice this before, but now it's more physically apparent, and it's wonderful. And I'm very grateful that I discovered the Wim Hof method as an example. Because when you do the breathing, you become more sensitive to that your capillaries apparently open up, your body becomes more sensitive, it opens up. At the same time, it alkalizes your blood system, all those things. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but at the same time, it kind of acts as a catalyst. Well, it is a catalyst for doing the Wim Hof method. And people have told me it's like, oh, cold shower, cold shower. Everybody focuses on right away is just a cold shower, but it's really not about just a cold shower. It's another tool that Mother Nature has been able to give us. Same thing with oxygen and breathing in the body. Everything's a tool, right? Everything. So, it's just kind of like this progression of like, okay, you do the breathing and then you go into, you do your regular shower and then you do like maybe a few seconds, doesn't matter. Whatever you feel like doing, the shock is there. And then, but that's a funny thing about shock, right? When something it shocks you, when something is surprising, the more you have something of anything really, the more the body adapts. There's a tendency to resist discomfort. There's a tendency to resist change. There's a tendency to risk, because we've been like that for thousands and thousands of years, right? It's counterproductive. It's kind of like not instinctive, but really, what is instinct? Instinct is adaptation too. Instinct is what you're used to, but then once you get to a new change, you will adapt to that too. So in reality, it doesn't matter when the change is, you surrender to it. That's what presence is. And with the Wim Hof method, at least for me, when I gradually did it, I started April 7, 2020. That was my first day. It's anniversary day. Woohoo. I did 30 seconds for the first, 30 seconds? Yeah, for the first day. And I went 45. It's kind of like on and off, but I recommended to most people that they do like, I don't know, it's not about the numbers. It really isn't. It's your body. Your body will know what to do. It could be 5 seconds, it could be 10 seconds, whatever. Whatever your minimum is, do that for a week, and then, again, of course, open yourself up with the breathing, then the cold shower, 1 week, one type of like duration, your time, whatever it is. And again, forget the numbers. It's not about the numbers. And then the next week, increase it a little bit. Go with the body. 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 At least for me, that's how I did it. And it just became this thing you get used to. And there you go. So it definitely has become a lot more instinctive. Or at least, you get used to it. You adapt to it. And, evolution doesn't happen. And this is what science says. That evolution doesn't happen until you have adaptation first. So, but the choice has to be definitely made, right? So anyways, getting out of the cold shower, that's what I realized, that, it's like, oh, okay. And it's really, every time there's a new sort of sensation that it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can sit with it. You can dance while in the cold shower too. And then you get used to it. Just enjoy, be in the moment. That's also part of that, right? We don't want to wait for something to give us a lesson to, okay, I got the cold shower, it's going to teach me. And then we rely on that. So now that's going back to the attachment to the outcome, right? So we want to release that and just give in to the cold shower. Give in. But more than that, give over. I've heard this phrase before. I think Gabrielle Bernstein said it. Give over. Right? It's not giving. It is giving in, but it's also giving over. It's trusting that it's like, okay, let the water guide you. And then from there, make it a habit. Commit to it. Make a decision. Put a time in this. Put a slot in your. I did it in the first You know, because I think it's also, I believe it's also has a lot to do with one important thing that even Eckhart mentioned before. He said that, I remember him saying this before, I don't remember when, but he said that, oh, it's in the book, in The Power of Now. He said that most people, most of us will not start something or even commit to something. That's the way I'm rewording everything here. Until we're ready. Meaning, when we're tired of the old, when we're tired of the shift, when we're tired of the things that don't work anymore. So, if, you know, and commitment has nothing to do with you forcing something. Again, it's that whole thing, right? You don't want to build things up and all of a sudden you give up on it. You have to find the... That's why you do things gradually. That's nature. It's gradual. Right? Rushing things will not do anything. There is a difference eventually if you rush something. One of, I think it was a Zen Buddhist or Zen master, he said that, what is it? Eckhart mentioned it. Hurry slowly. So that means you're still playing with it. So then it ties back into being present, being childlike, playing with it. Just be. So anyways, that's my take on it. So, especially now, what with the transition to Uranus now transitioning to Gemini, trine Pluto into Aquarius, there's going to be a shift in from the old ways into the new. And, but, you know, do we have to wait for that? No. But you make a choice. Life is a choice. You make a choice. Forget the good and bad duality. That's the duality, right? But again, you'll realize it for yourself. You know, sometimes there's a reason why we reincarnate. And if you don't learn the lessons of this lifetime, you'll have next lifetime to do it. You just won't remember the past one. But, you know, that's where instinct kind of comes in. In a way, it's kind of rooted in DNA. You know, your lessons keep happening, lessons keep happening. And I feel like it's a beautiful thing too. Like, you know, it's like, okay, gotta take the class again, as Dolores puts it. But I'm sure that's also literal. You know, it's like, oh, you gotta go back. You won't remember the past life, but that's fine. Anyways, the point is, we make choices. That's really what it is. Choices and learning. And that's what we're here for. And then we elevate. Eventually. Right? So, this is my little thing for today. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.